ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Simply Technical podcast. Your main host, Evan Lockhart, co-host,
Heaton Miner.
Eaton Miner.
And I'm Chance Turner.
And this is our special guest, Chance. For those of you watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Those listening on other platforms, sorry you don't get a video feed. But make sure you check us out on the other platforms. Should be uploaded on YouTube and Spotify. But for our agenda for today's podcast, we're going to talk about Elon Musk mainly. Then we're going to go into Mars, a little bit of SpaceX stuff, renewable energy, and if we have time, AI, and maybe a little bit of ranting on Chance's part. But let's get into it. First, Elon Musk. So for those of you, you probably know him. I'm sure most of you know him.
I hope you know who he is.
If you don't know who he is, then
Stop watching this.
you need to hit the pause button and check out a video on him. Hit Wikipedia. Very reliable. But for those of you, we're going to talk about Tesla first. So what do you guys think about Tesla? The new products? They impressing you?
I mean, yeah, because if you think about it, the amount of technology that's in their even just the Model 3, for I think it starts at what, 35,000?
That's the lowest end model.
I think so. It's outrageous. So my fiance just bought a new car. She bought it for actually I probably should leave that part out.
She got a good deal.
She got a good car, but relative to the Tesla, if I've always said, I was like, honestly, we can just save up a little bit more money and we can just get a Tesla, because look how much nicer the features are in that thing. So
yeah, it looks like the base model is $32,000 for the Model 3.
And I think it's like
That's really cheap, guys.
$5,000 to add the
extended range, maybe?
Not the extended range. It's the AI system that.
Yeah, like the self-driving.
Self-driving, yeah.
Something like that. It's like $5,000 add-on. Yeah, full self-driving capability coming this year, $6,000.
That's
so
not bad at all.
$38,000, give or take.
That's sticker price too, and some of you guys out there are probably good finaglers and.
Oh, you pay sticker price.
You pay sticker price.
Tesla, you pay sticker price. Let's be
Yikes.
honest.
But that sounds like a great deal. What other kind of battery cars are out there?
I don't know anything
You
else.
said, I'm sure Ford's getting into it.
Yeah, so I feel like a lot of the car companies are starting to jump on board now that the Tesla's been out for a while. We saw Nissan come in pretty early with the Nissan Leaf back in 2009, maybe 2010. Chevrolet came out with the Volt as kind of its competitor for the Leaf. And then everybody's kind of jumping on board now. Chevrolet's got a full electric. Full electric is called a Bolt with a B, which is super, super awful naming. Because they have a Volt with a V, which is a hybrid that's the last year is this year, I think, 2019. And then the Bolt is its successor or whatever. It's full electric. It's like 120 miles of range. But anyway, so we got the Volt from Chevrolet, the Bolt. Anyway, the Bolt's successor. Moving on. Ford's supposed to come out with a new one, I think released 2020, something like that. Released 2020.
Soon.
Ford's getting a new car.
Earliest of 6 months, and then after that, 12 months. But so most of those that you've said are hybrids, though. So Tesla's really one of the first all-electric cars, if I'm not wrong.
Right, Tesla's definitely a big competitor in the market, and they were definitely the first to the premium electric car. I think Nissan Leaf may have beat them to the full electric car, but they were definitely the first to put out a premium electric car with the Model S. The Chevrolet Bolt is a full electric, sitting at 120-ish miles, I think. Nope, 238 miles in a Bolt. The Leaf is a full electric with 100 and something miles. Ford's new car will be a full electric, 100. I don't know what the mileage is, but it's coming out soon. But yeah, one thing with Tesla is they've been super reliable. So Tesla's been super reliable about their batteries being good, being a good car. The Leaf and some of the other car manufacturers that started to do electric cars definitely had some issues early on with reliability. Like the Nissan Leaf, for instance, they replaced most of their packs within 80,000 miles. And they've had almost zero, I don't know what the number is, but very few Tesla packs come out to be replaced like early on, and they've been out for quite a while now, so 300, 400, 500,000 miles on some of those battery packs, and they're still running strong. And so that's definitely a big deal that Tesla's put out is they actually have a good battery, which is important when that's all you have.
Well, I know that reliability hasn't been a huge issue when it comes to the electric engines, but I remember, several years ago when Elon was first talking about the Tesla cars, that the battery pack was vital, and how expensive they are, and how much research he's done, and he's even started his own battery company, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Uh, and that
Yeah,
was just that big deal, was that reliability with the battery pack.
yeah, exactly. And so the lithium batteries is what he uses a lithium battery in his car, and that's definitely a big deal, right? Because it's the only energy source you have. It's how you're storing your energy to move, and so it's definitely a huge deal. And whenever he first got started, lithium battery packs were insanely expensive here in the U.S. and even abroad. But he's definitely been pushing to bring. He's partnered with LG. He's partnered with LG or Panasonic. I'll look it up. Anyway, partnered with LG or Panasonic for his Gigafactory, and so that's who makes the majority of his batteries for his cars that are produced in a Gigafactory. Uh, hold on.
And
Uh,
so what I'm getting from this is the Tesla car is really on the cusp of the technology. Seems like they're pushing the boundaries. They're doing what's right. I know that he's had issues with producing enough cars with the demand. Uh, I believe that was an issue. Am I correct in that? Was the manufacturing? It was just the lead time to get one of your cars out was ridiculous.
yeah, he's definitely having an issue right now, and this is partly just due to the fact that Gigafactory is not complete yet. But he's definitely had an issue getting cars out, especially with the low price Model 3 recently. I mean, it's just such a low price car that allows normal Americans to get in on the deal, and so he's definitely having an issue here recently getting those cars on the road and out of the factory. There's been a big push to like 3,000 cars a month or something as goal, and I think he made it for a few months, and then they had some issues with the factory. So anyway, just kind of working some of that out, but he's definitely that's definitely his big deal is trying to get
The product out the
the
door.
volume up,
Yeah.
trying to get more cars out the door. Yeah, so correction, it's Panasonic that he's partnered with in a Gigafactory. So Panasonic's who makes a lot of those batteries for the Tesla.
I mean, that's a smart business deal for them.
Yeah. Wait,
I'm
so what do you think about the amount of debt they've racked up and the fact that they're not necessarily turning out a profit?
Well, look at every other car manufacturer in the industry. We definitely don't have a car manufacturer
Yeah.
currently that's not in a huge amount of debt. We've seen Ford was one of the few that didn't get bailed out in the 07, 08 time frame. So I think Tesla's doing just fine, even though they're racking up some debt. I mean that's kind of just a price you got to pay to play the game, basically to build all that up, to build up the sales and to build up all your factory and everything, right? Because Musk is pouring an insane amount of resources into building his batteries and get his factories set up and all this stuff set up. And so here in 5 or 6 years, he's just going to reap the rewards from all of that investment, right? So he's
Yeah.
put a lot of money on the line right now, assuming everything's going to keep selling, but he's definitely going to reap the rewards here in the next 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 years. That Gigafactory is going to be around for a while, and he just built it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he's got a long life left on that factory, and so I think he's making a big investment into 20 years down the road. May not see it
Yeah.
today,
Yeah.
but definitely 20 years
But
down the road.
but what about the idea that I mean it's a large company, but it's still relatively small compared to Ford, isn't it?
Oh, for sure.
So couldn't they easily use the technology that Musk has built pretty much
Steal it
yes,
almost.
exactly. Because it's not patented, I don't think.
Right, right. Yes. I mean, anybody could do it. We see this a lot with the bigger companies, right? Is somebody will have something you want to do, but the big company gets complacent, right? And
Yeah.
so these big companies have been making cars for 100 years. They're just like, we're gonna make cars. We know how to
Yeah,
make
yeah.
cars. Why would we make anything else? And that's before Musk came in the game. There wasn't really a big push to go the full electric route, but that's been kind of his thing. Is one of his things that he wants to accomplish is make electric cars viable, and so I think that's been a big push to get the other players on board, and we are seeing them do it now.
Yeah.
Right with Ford coming out in 2020 with a new car. We've got a couple Chevrolet options. We got some Nissan options. We're getting uh, hybrid pickups. Chevrolet makes a hybrid pickup. We're getting more and more options. As soon as Tesla comes out with a hybrid pickup, everybody else is going to follow suit. We're going to see a bunch more hybrid pickups or full electric pickups, and so I think Tesla's just helping to drive the industry in that direction. Without some push to change, everything's just people get complacent and nothing changes.
Yeah.
The companies are satisfied with the products they're putting out. People may not be 100% satisfied, but they get the job done, so they don't really complain.
Right. I mean, if
And
you're
so they require one company to push the bounds and push the other companies. Hey, looks like they're doing okay. We can go into this and steal their idea. And I mean, usually the second or third iteration, that company for that product usually comes out on top. They figure out a different way to innovate it, and they learn from the other company's mistakes and come out on top. Is what I'm trying to say. That happens in other industries. Apple, they weren't the first to come out with the iPhone or with a smartphone, but they,
Yes.
right, they were
They
the
did
first to make it viable, right?
Right.
Make it a consumer product. Yeah, basically, I mean, if you're making a product and you're making money, like why are you going to change your product, right? You want to keep making the product, making money, right? How do you tell your investors like, hey, we're going to go have this pet project that's going to cost a lot of money, and we don't know if it's actually going to sell, right? So it's a lot easier for a company that's established, has been around for quite a while, to just sit there and keep doing what you've been doing, right? But it's a lot easier for a startup. Whenever Musk, he got a lot of money out of PayPal, and so that's kind of where some of his startup money came from. And so he has this big idea. It's a lot easier for him to go implement that than a big company to come back and say, hey, we want to go pour a ton of money out to something we don't know if it's going to work or not. But now that's been proven, you can see all the other companies kind of stepping up their game and getting in on it.
And you said earlier electric truck. What other kind of products are the industry going towards in battery operated cars?
Yeah, I mean, I think electric trucks will be a big deal. I'm not really sure how they're going to fit in the kind of the whole grand scheme of things, right? I think they're going to kind of fill the consumer side of the pickups, not necessarily like the actual people that use them for contracting and people that use it for
A
actual
work truck?
trailers.
Mhm.
Right, more like a work truck. I don't know if they're going to target that that side of the market, or if they're going to target more of the consumer. Like, hey, I pull my boat to the dock every weekend or every other weekend, right, to go to the lake, or I kind of occasionally use my pickup
Yeah.
for to go get stuff from Lowe's, that type of stuff. I think that's where they're going to target, right? The people that like a high end pickup, especially with Tesla, they're going to target those people that like a high end pickup that just use it around town and maybe pull their boat to the lake a weekend or something. Because I just can't see a lot of those people that want a work truck spending the money it's going to require to buy an electric pickup.
Well, I know there's one company, actually, a very small electric vehicle company that only produces electric trucks right now. I think it's Bavarian is what it's called, and I think they're priced at like 90,000. So
Yeah, Rivarian. So it says a 2020 R1T EV. I just pulled up a Motor Trend article.
So I mean, if they really are 90,000,
I
I
mean,
mean,
I'm not 100% sure on the price because it's been a while since I've heard, but they're not cheap.
well, if we say that they're 90,000, I mean, you can get a nice, F-150.
Oh, 90 grand gets you the top of the line in any current pickup in anywhere. I mean, you get top of the line F350 diesel tricked out with the
So I mean,
full,
you
like,
shouldn't be
big text package or whatever, right?
when you get a this say it's $90,000 truck. I mean, you shouldn't expect a Ford Ranger on this.
Right.
On that low end. I mean, I would hope you would get, for that price tag, I'd hope you get something.
There's a $69,000 starting price tag.
That's not terrible.
Not terrible. That's like
Still-
top end pickup
still
on a
expensive.
half ton, dude. That's literally like top end pickup
For
over a half
for an
ton.
electric truck with 400-mile range.
400-mile range is quite a bit.
Well, Musk, in some of his tweets when he was talking about this new electric truck, and it's been, a year or so since he's talked about it.
Yeah.
He talked about it for the working class.
Yeah.
That might have been, just a dream of his. I don't know how viable that is, but
Yeah, and
because he talked about charging batteries, your
Yeah,
drill
power
and
tools
power
and-
tools
yeah.
off of it.
Yeah.
And that could have been just to drive the stock
It's in
of
essence
his.
a mobile generator, pretty
Yeah,
much.
that could have been to just drive his the stock up on his company, but
right, and he has definitely talked about the fact that he wants kind of more of the contractor working, electrician, that type of person using it. But let's be honest, are you going to go tear up a $50,000 pickup? Because I guarantee you, like, I've worked in the construction, you tear your pickup up. You're not nice to your pickup whenever you're working out of it.
no,
You're gonna
I
go take
completely
a
understand
$50,000
that.
pickup and go be mean to it. Like, who's going to do that?
I
Maybe
wouldn't-
here in 3 years when they start, probably the price starts backing down a little
Yeah.
bit. But I definitely don't. I see them as the toy pickup, not necessarily the working pickup. At least to start out. And
As the price drops, as more companies start to produce them,
right. Used Tesla electric pickups, 3 or 4 or 5 years old in the used market, I guarantee you every one of those is going to contractors
I,
for
I,
sure.
I mean, as someone who drives a hybrid yourself, how much do you spend roughly on gas?
Oh, driving a hybrid is awesome, especially ones with decently long range and plug-in. So one of the bigger deals about a hybrid is being able to plug it into electricity and not only use gasoline to power it. So like the Prius is a hybrid, but it doesn't have a plug-in feature, and so you still have to use gasoline to charge the battery. However, there are cars, like the Volt is what I drive, and so the Volt's a plug-in hybrid, and it gets 36-ish miles on a charge, and so I just plug it in at night. I go to work and come back, and it's like $1 a day, and I drive a pretty good commute. I drive a 34-ish mile commute every day, and so it's like $1 versus like $4.50 a day for my commute, and so it's insanely cheap, and you don't have a lot of the maintenance that comes along with the gasoline engine, right? You don't have to change the oil near as often. You don't have a lot of those maintenance items that you would normally have, air filters, things like that you would on internal combustion with electrics, because electric doesn't have near the moving parts of an internal combustion engine has.
Now, I got a question about electric engines. Chance, you might know about this, you might not. Are they more efficient than a combustion engine?
You have to define more efficient, right? And so, per energy input, they're insanely more efficient, right? And so, if you're talking about just electrical energy input, they're insanely more efficient, right? You're talking to like an 80, 85, maybe even 90% on some of the AC motors efficiency rate to take electricity into mechanical energy,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
To move. Gasoline engine, you're talking like 17, 18, 20%.
I knew combustion engines were not all that great. Like you said, 17% is the number that I've always heard.
Yeah, it's
And
definitely
a lot of that is due to
or even
heat losses or
it's all in heat, dude. You're
friction.
blowing up something, right? You're lighting something on fire. So most of the energy is translated to fire, not to expanding
movement,
air,
yeah.
right? So the expanding air is how you get your mechanical energy. You get your kinetic energy out of it. And so yes, a lot of that is translated into heat right out your tailpipe.
So it sounds, with my engineering mind, I think about efficiencies, and I would want to go towards an electric car or something with an electric motor because it's more efficient. And personally, just because of efficiency, I like that efficiency, knowing I get the most bang for my buck.
Right, but it ultimately comes down to how you're getting the energy, right? So we get energy from fossil fuels like gasoline or whatever, right? So that is a very, very, very energy dense fuel. But how do we get it for electricity, right? Where does our electricity come from? Our electricity comes from coal, nuclear. I mean, there's a little bit of solar, wind now. So it depends on. You kind of got to look at a bigger picture when you're talking about plug-in electrics, because that electricity has to come from somewhere, right? So do you have a local power? Do you have a home solar system, or do you have a coal power plant you're powering it off of, right? So where does that energy come from? So it's not just your own vehicle. It's you got to look at a little bit bigger picture to figure out where the electricity coming from.
So your efficiency is personal of your 85%, but in the grand scheme, when you're getting from a coal plant or your local, power plant, they're most likely using the cheapest option, which is usually fossil fuels.
Right. So you're still using those fossil fuels to produce a lot of your energy. We have a lot of coal in the U.S., right? So you're still using a lot of fossil fuels for the electricity, right? And so it will be more efficient, right? Power plants are definitely more efficient than an internal combustion engine because they actually care about the heat, right? They use heat to drive the turbines, and so they are a lot more efficient, but they're still not. You
They're
can't
still
just
not
say,
85%.
right? You're definitely losing more than that. You're losing quite a bit, and by the time you create it, right, turn the heat into mechanical energy to spin the generator and to get it across the country wherever it's going, right? However far it's got to go, it's got line losses and stuff, and transformer losses. So you're definitely losing a decent amount in that transition. So you're definitely not like you can't say you're 90% efficient because you got to plug in, an electric car, but
your local efficiency
you're
is
definitely
probably
increasing
the
your
best.
efficiency because it's definitely not 20%, right? So you're definitely better than 20%, but you're still definitely not up there until you get into maybe solar or something where it's a renewable energy source and you don't really care a whole lot about uh, the energy input at that point in time when it's renewable. You don't care as much about the energy input.
With your hybrid car, do you have any complaints
Uh,
from the hybrid technical side of it? not the it's a Chevy or it's
Yeah, the user interface is a little not that great on like the controls and stuff, but that's all interior. Just Chevrolet kind of borked it up a little bit. The electric part is awesome. I mean, it's quiet to drive. It took me a while to get used to it because it doesn't make any noise when you're moving. It like you turn it on and it's a power button, not a start button, right? It literally just turns the car on and you're moving. The plus side of it is the climate controlled, so remote climate controlled. I would call it remote start. Like most cars have a remote start, but it's
the car doesn't start.
The car doesn't start, so it's remote climate control. So you can hit the button, a ways away and get the climate, get the AC or heater or whatever going, and that's freaking cool because it doesn't start the motor, right? It just starts using your battery to cool off or heat the car, so that's pretty cool. Because you don't have that spin up time of the motor and warming up the motor and everything. You're definitely a lot more efficient in that aspect of it. Is you can just turn on the AC and you're not wasting a lot of energy to start the engine. But no, it's been great. I ended up being pretty lucky, and I've got an almost brand new battery in mine, which is awesome, even though it's a 2012. But no, it's been great.
So good.
Yeah, so I'm gonna kind of transition this a little bit because I'm out of the engineering loop a little bit. So the self-driving capabilities of Tesla right now, we can't really utilize them. If you have, I mean, you can utilize it to an extent, but at what point do you think we're going to completely transition to this self-driving?
Well, I think the technology is almost there. So it's a question of I don't know if your question is is the technology there, or is your question more on the lines of when will we actually transition? Right?
Kind of both.
I think there's kind of two different answers.
Yeah.
I think we're basically there technology wise, right? I think the Tesla's proven it. We've had quite a few other companies that are kind of proving it. Uber's got a pretty good system going. Google's got a smart self-driving car they've been driving around. And so from a technological standpoint, I think we just need some more time. Just some more time to work out some more of the pieces. But I think we're almost there, just technology wise, and being able to drive on the road, interpret road signs, interpret who's where, get locations of other vehicles, make sure we're not going too fast, too slow, all of that. GPS, like all the stuff that we have to have is there. It's just a matter of perfecting that to better than human, to be driving better than a human, right? So a human driver is not the greatest in the world. We're pretty good, right? There's not that many wrecks compared to how many cars are on the road.
Some of us are better than others.
And so we just got to get better than humans, and I think we're good. But the other flip side of that answer your question is the political, like, how do we feel about not driving our cars anymore?
Yeah.
Right. So you turn 16, that's the big thing. You get a driver's license.
Yeah.
What happens when you don't have to get a driver's license? 16 doesn't matter anymore, right?
Yeah. I mean, people are terrified of riding in airplanes, and it's because they don't have control. So
Right.
Which makes no sense because you are far more likely to die in a car crash than you are in a plane crash. So.
Statistically, yes.
Yeah, statistically.
Right. It's just when you die in an airplane, it's a pretty sure, like you're pretty sure.
Yeah,
you're
gonna die.
Like, you're definitely gonna die if the airplane crashes.
I
The
guess
car
these guys
crashes,
haven't seen
you're probably not
Sully
gonna
yet.
die.
They haven't seen Sully. Check out that movie.
Right. So anyway, so there's the side of not having control of it, but there's also the kind of the freedom you get when you start driving. That freedom of, oh, I can actually go somewhere. That side of things, and it's how comfortable are you with a computer just being on the road with you, right?
Yeah.
Do you trust a computer to drive better than a human would have?
Yeah, I do.
So the next talking point to your question was, when do we think all cars will be self-driving, or do you think that all the new cars will be?
I mean, first it has to be legal to be completely self-driven, and then eventually, once that happens, we'll move on to all cars being self-driving vehicles. But
would those cars have driving capabilities? Will they have steering wheels for people? I mean, eventually,
I think there has to be an override, just in case there's a malfunction.
I've seen iRobot quite a few times, and there's a self-driving in that, and Will Smith takes over and he crashes. So
shows who's more error prone.
He was also getting attacked by AI, so that might have played a little influence into it. But
right, so to kind of go down that road, right? So do you have an override? I think the answer is yes, because there are a lot of roads that don't exactly look like roads, and you may want to go down, right? Or do you want to go down this freaking corn path, right? Right, there's a lot of roads, fire roads or just dirt roads that don't typically look like a road to a computer. but they're actually road you want to drive down. So I think there's enough roads in the country, in at least the United States, I can speak for, that don't actually look like roads, that you would need some sort of override for the cases that the car couldn't handle yet. Because I think dirt roads would be a big thing that the current self-driving cars couldn't handle. Right? There's no lines.
I agree with that. Which
How does it know where to go? There's no lines.
We call it AI.
Right.
Is it actually? It's deciding, but it's pre-programmed. It takes input, correct?
So,
correct me if I'm wrong. It takes input and says, "This is a road. I need to stay between these lines." It's not. I'm not even sure how to put it, but
right. And so there's kind of two ways to do it. Right. You could define a rule set like, hey, you should stay inside the lines. You should read the speed limit sign. If it says 60, only go 60. Right. If there's somebody in front of you, slow down to where you're XYZ feet behind them. Right. There's some of those rules you can put in place to start going down the path of self-driving, but then there's a certain part where you start to lose, uh, like you can't actually strictly define the problem, right? And so there's a lot of instances on the road you can't strictly define how the road works and how other drivers are driving, and so some of that, and this is kind of where the AI term comes into play, is we don't know how to solve the problem from the inputs that are given, and so we kind of tell the computer what we think the solution is, and we hope can kind of figure out how to get there from the inputs, right? And so taking the radar and the GPS and the drivers, the visual camera inputs and different inputs that the car is getting, we kind of know what the output should look like, and so we can kind of help coax the computer that way. But we ultimately hope the computer can figure out how to take the inputs and get the output we want, because a lot of the problems can't be strictly defined, like stay inside the lines, right? Because there's cases where you don't want to stay inside the lines. You may want to merge. May want to move a lane, right, to pass somebody, or you may want to get off to exit, right? So there's cases where some of that starts getting a little fuzzy on, and it's not near as strictly defined. And so that's kind of where you start getting an AI realm of, we can strictly define the problem and we can strictly define the solution, but we can't strictly define how to get from the problem to the solution.
that's very interesting. My professors in college always said there's no hope in engineering, but it sounds like there's a lot of hope in that.
There's a lot of hope in it because the computers are going to figure it out. We don't have to figure it out. We don't have to be that smart.
And doesn't it, when it comes to AI, doesn't it get, the computer gets better as these, so that every Tesla is hooked up to whatever mainframe Tesla is running,
Right.
and it's just gathering data as every car is driving. I think
Right.
they hit 1 billion miles driven like a couple months ago.
Of
So,
self-driven?
I think just driven.
Just driven?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because they take a lot of your data and ship it back to the Tesla computers back at their, I don't know where they're at, but anyway,
Yeah.
they take a lot of your data that
Probably at
where you're
Google.
driving, right? And so there's a lot of things like speed, how long you press the brake pedal, gas pedal. There's a lot of these things that's really good to know because you can start observing how people drive, and so the data is super helpful. So that's one thing they're definitely gathering.
So it's live experiments in
Uh,
essence.
I don't know about live experiments, but they're definitely watching you drive.
So someone could hack my Tesla and assassinate me, is what you're saying, pretty much.
Well, there's a lot easier ways to find you. So. I feel
Everyone-
like there's a lot easier ways than hacking a Tesla to find you.
Everyone wants to assassinate Keaton,
Yeah,
so be
exactly.
careful. Never ride with him.
Right. But yeah, to your point, right? The more data you have, right? So if you know the inputs,
Yep.
so the more input you have, and so we know what the input is, and we know what the output is because we have the output of that, right? We have the inputs of the gas pedal, the brake pedal, the steering wheel, and we have the outputs of the car was in this position on the road, the car was in this location, this GPS location, the car was behind this car, the car was here, right? And so we have a lot of the outputs too. So that those observed miles that Tesla can gather are a huge wealth of data that we can put into the computer model to try to help make those decisions better, right? So the more data we can feed it, especially with a well-defined input to an output, we can feed it that, and it can kind of make the correlations without us making the correlation.
Yeah. Right. Sense.
And
So-
so that's just a ton of strictly, of actual inputs to actual outputs that the computer can then model to help define how to drive.
So the police, when you have an accident, they can call Tesla and say, "Hey,
What happened?
I would
what kind of outputs?"
They can also call Chevrolet or Ford or any other car company. If your car is OnStar, they know exactly what was happening.
The government's watching, guys. Be careful.
Right, and so there are, most car companies do this. I feel like definitely OnStar cars have all the capabilities to know exactly where you're at. What's happening. I don't know. They probably keep data forever. But it's not just Tesla.
My Buick,
They
my
can, they
2005
can,
Buick
they can
has
call up Apple
OnStar, so
and see where your phone was at and how fast you're going, and if you're on your phone or not.
Apple does not have my permission. Even though I accepted the terms, Apple does not. I didn't read
Apple
them.
definitely knows where you're at and
I didn't read them,
if
guys.
you're on your phone or not.
I accepted them, but I did not
They
read
could
them.
just call Apple
Well,
or Google
good thing I don't get in car accidents. Knock on wood.
or AT&T or Sprint. They see you just sent a text 5 seconds before the accident.
Well, I don't text drive, and neither should you.
All right.
Next talking point. So we talked about renewable energy with coal. I mean, not renewable, but we talked about the energy industry.
Right.
Renewable, we have wind, solar, and nuclear. Those are kind of the main ones.
Right.
I don't even know if there's any others. I'm sure there are.
Yeah, like you can get geothermal. Like there's dams, right? We use dams.
Hydroelectric,
for turbines.
So where do we think that industry is going? I know that solar is getting a lot more efficient and cheaper.
A lot is kind of
That's relative.
it's definitely relative.
That's
term.
relative.
Right.
But you can buy a flexible solar panel on Amazon for pretty cheap. I know that when
it's still not cheap compared to the price you pay per kilowatt hour from the electric company, right? So that's the ultimate problem is it's still not that cheap. Right, because we paid right around 10 cents a kilowatt hour, right, for electricity. That's pretty cheap.
that sounds cheap. I'm glad I split it 3 ways.
So, right, so if you buy a 100-watt solar panel for $100, that 100-watt solar panel has to run for quite a while to get down to 10 cents per kilowatt hour. That's just the initial investment of that.
Well, the way that people talk about solar energy is that it's inefficient.
It is inefficient, but we're talking about energy input of the sun. That's a big energy input.
I agree with you. Let me finish my talking point. So people say that it's inefficient, but it's around 20%.
Right. Right.
It's around there. It might be some more expensive ones are going to be
combustion engines.
Yeah. So why are people fighting so much on a solar panel of, oh, it's inefficient, I don't want that, but yet the car that they drive every day, is 15%, 17% efficient.
I don't think they know their car is 17% efficient.
That's not widely accepted and known?
Probably not.
I guess
not.
No,
I didn't know.
You get 30 miles a gallon and you're happy. Because a gallon is $2.50. So you're happy with 30 miles a gallon. Why do you need to change it? You're not happy with how expensive solar panels are.
But like I said, they're getting cheaper. They're becoming flexible. When I was in Europe a couple of years ago, specifically in Germany, they had quite a bit of solar panels on roofs. They embraced it. I don't know if that's a whole European thing.
That's definitely
a European thing.
It's more progressive over there.
That's something that I would love to do, progressive wise, at least for myself and even the United States.
I mean, and I think it's just a matter of putting the investment in. So I feel like Europeans are probably more long-term thinking than Americans are. Maybe I'm wrong.
That's a generalization, but we'll accept it. We'll accept it for right now.
Americans are typically right now, like I want it right now. Like we have cell phones and Starbucks and
McDonald's,
Netflix and McDonald's and Chick-fil-A and name anything else you can get like right now. Literally like right now, hop in your car and get it. And so a lot of that solar panels are more of a long-term game, right? And so you put up your money and it may take 6, 7, 8 years to pay back. Right, so it's a long-term play. Like you just poured 10 grand into this thing, and it takes 8, 9 years to make sense.
So, and I think another issue with the solar panel industry is when you get this energy and you have an excess, you typically sell it back to the company, the local electrical company.
Right.
I think as of right now, they're required to buy it back.
Required is kind of a stretch. There are some laws in place, and different states have different rules about how it works. But there are rules about what they buy back, how much they buy back for. Usually, it just varies by state, right? So Oklahoma is one of the worst states. Texas is one of the better states. It just varies by state of what they'll do for you. California's pretty good. whether they'll buy it back at the same rate that you bought it for, or whether or not they buy it back, at a lower rate or whatever, right? And so, yeah, part of that is just the inconsistency with electric companies and them not wanting to buy it back because they don't want to buy it back. They're not making any money if they buy it back at the same price because they're just going to sell it to somebody else at the same price. That's zero money.
And a lot they
And
have
they
to
wanna
do the
make
work.
money.
They have to do the work as
Right.
well.
They're keeping up with all the utility poles, all the transmission lines, right? And
Yeah.
so buying it back from you at the same price you bought it for just doesn't make sense for a lot of them, right? Just
Because it
business.
requires them it requires them more work if I'm not mistaken.
Not necessarily more work, but they're definitely doing maintenance on all of the equipment you're using to transmit that from your house to the neighbor's house,
So that's an interesting point.
right? And so if we were, I don't even know if that's the problem. I think the problem is just the fact that uh, it's so expensive. It's still too expensive for it to make sense in most homes, and we're very wasteful in the United States with our electricity. And so I think part of it's just the fact that most homes have to have an insanely huge system to be completely independent or to have excess, right? So especially with how uh, just how much energy we use from day to day, you have to have an insanely huge system, right? If you're living in a smaller place, like if you have
A 1-bedroom
12 a
apartment.
1,200 square foot house versus a 3,000 square foot house is a big difference on how much energy it takes, right? And so I think it's just the investment and how much energy we actually use, so that solar system has to be 12 kilowatts or 13 kilowatt hours or 13 kilowatts, right? So it's going to be a big solar system. And so it's just the investment part of it, I think, is still the big factor for a lot of America.
Okay. I know here in Oklahoma we have big wind turbines. I know the wildlife may not appreciate the big turbines, but I mean, I'm in the rural areas, I don't mind a big turbine.
Right.
I don't know about you guys, but having 30 wind turbines, it's not that big a deal, but they're not very efficient either.
I mean, I don't know very much about the renewable energy space, but you said
Wind
you don't
turbines.
in
I don't
urban
mind them.
spaces or
No,
in,
rural.
Oh, okay. I thought you said in urban space. I was gonna say that there's not enough wind.
Yes, on top of the Devon Tower, I'd really just
I was
love.
gonna say I don't think.
I'd really love a huge wind turbine.
I mean, that would probably make it one of the taller buildings in America. So let's go for it.
I'm all for it. Let's sign this legislation. But is wind on the since these other ones, other renewable energies are making a surge.
Right.
Does wind start to die down?
I think wind's an interesting play, right? And so there's kind of a couple sides to that coin. Wind's kind of interesting, right? And so wind, the plus side of wind is it generates for 24 hours a day, right? And so solar, you only get about 6 usable hours a day. So you have to get all of your energy in 6 hours and store it overnight. But wind, on the other hand, winds usually die down at night, but they're still blowing, right? And so you can, something that makes energy for 24 hours.
That's a lot more,
right? It's a lot longer of a
appetizing.
time, right? It's a lot easier to get a good average power output than if you're 6 out of 24. And so that's another part.
That's something I hadn't thought about.
Huge downside of solar is the fact that you got 6 out of 24 hours a day that you're making decent solar power, right? And by wind, you might be making 12, 14, 16 hours a day making wind power. So that's an interesting. So that's a plus, right? Because you don't have to have as much energy per hour,
And
because you're doing a lot more hours.
They're kind of left alone. I mean, I don't know how much maintenance goes into those things. I'm sure they have scheduled maintenance.
Right. An interesting thing that I haven't dug into would be the if winds shift over time, right? So if they put a wind farm in that's currently got wind, does it still have wind in 10 years? Does it still have wind in 20 years? Does that wind kind of shift because the climate kind of shifts slightly and that wind starts shifting to a different area and they just put up 25-year turbines and they're not making power at 10 years?
Bad investment.
So what I'm thinking is they do shift, because I know that those, what are they called, jet streams that are way up in the
Right.
in the sky. I know those shift a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously you're not going to get to a point where there's zero wind, but if say the climate shifts or changes,
right. But the problem, if you're making wind 16 hours a day and that wind goes down to 2 hours a day, that you're spinning those turbines, that's a big difference.
you become your investment. You lost a lot of money if something like that
put them
happens.
in the wrong spot.
That's why you pay somebody a lot of money
to figure out where the winds
are going to be.
We don't know where the winds are going to be. Fun fact.
Well,
the plus side of the sun is it's usually shining. and we usually know where it's going to shine
So, long story short, invest in solar because it's a bet. It's a good bet for 6 hours a day.
at.
What about nuclear?
So nuclear is another interesting one. You talking about nuclear?
Yeah.
Nuclear. Here's my thought
Very-
on nuclear. It's good. It's real good.
Better.
It's a bright spot.
Better or worse than solar?
So the plus side about nuclear is the efficiency, right? So the energy input and energy output is pretty good, and it's not super expensive. So it works very similar to how coal power plants work because they're just producing heat from the nuclear reaction, and so that heat is just right. It's the same process, so it's not much more of an investment than a coal power plant, except for you get the nuclear side to deal with the actual nuclear reaction, and it's super efficient, right? And we can use up basically all the energy in that uh, whatever the input material is for the nuclear reaction, right? We can pretty much use up all the energy because we can just keep using it until it gets cold, and once it's cold, it's no longer nuclear, basically, right? But it does have a little bit of residual radioactivity. That's kind of the downside of nuclear is what do we do with the radioactive waste?
Chernobyl.
We just find a hole somewhere on the earth and start dumping it, right?
No.
We shoot it in space. Like, what do we do with this radioactive waste? And what happens whenever there's an earthquake, like in Japan, right?
Yeah.
And these nuclear reactors are spewing radioactive material, or Chernobyl, or some other, right? So the downsides of nuclear are low most of the time, but can be very drastic.
Yeah.
Right? If it's not handled correctly.
So if a problem occurs, you have catastrophic.
problem.
Yes. There's no small problems in nuclear renewable energy.
Nope. If you're gonna have a problem, it's a big problem.
The military uses quite a bit of nuclear power.
Right. They love it because they can have 1,000 pounds of
Uranium or whatever.
uranium or something, and it can move a ship for 10 years.
So when I was in high school, a submarine nuclear engineer came and spoke to my class about his submarine.
Right.
And he was saying that he actually gets less radiation while on the ship and interacting with the core, maybe not the core, around the components, than he does if he was on the surface from, the sun or other components that we use.
That's probably true.
That-
I could believe that.
That's I would think that being closer to a nuclear reactor would make you
Yeah,
have more. I'm sure they
we're-
have adequate shielding.
We're pretty good about shielding. It's just about shielding those flying electrons, right? And so it's just about keeping those contained. So I mean, we can do shielding.
Those submarines and other naval ships, they have weaponized. I believe uranium. I believe is what they use.
Weapons grade.
Weapons grade.
It's
So
called power grade. Weapons
they're-
grade goes in warheads.
okay, he said. Obviously, this was 5 years ago, 6
Right.
years ago, but he said it was weapon grade uranium,
It's quite possible.
and that their fusion reactors or their nuclear reactors are a tenth the size of the civilian ones because they don't need as much uranium to create the same amount of power.
Right, and they're talking about long-term power output, right? They don't care about a huge amount of power output. They just need power output for a long time, right? Because they're going to be pretty efficient about what they use for power on a submarine or on an aircraft carrier.
And one of the interesting things that I never really thought about on those kind of ships was they stay down there for a really long time.
Right.
The human factor in that kind of thing, being underwater for so long, you get homesick or whatever. That's the key factor in why they come up. Food,
Right,
and
and
the human
food.
factor.
Right. It's because we're human. Definitely not because we can't build something that can be underwater for 100 years.
I think that's pretty amazing. But that's just me.
Right.
Is there any other talking points we want to talk about with nuclear?
I don't think so.
Well, what would it take? Will the civilian side ever get to that, weapons grade uranium or?
We also run out of uranium after a while. I can't speak to the chemistry side of things, but we will run out of uranium eventually. If we go
Uranium can be synthesized or something similar. I
I
could be wrong. That
I'm
could be
not a
far
chemist
off.
person. I'm
Yeah,
assuming
I'm-
we'll run out.
I thought it could be synthesized.
It
But
may be, but you have to have energy to synthesize it.
Yeah.
that's
How
true.
much energy does it take to make the uranium?
and then that could be
Right.
a lost cause.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there more energy input than energy output at that point? So do you use your nuclear reactor to make more nuclear things?
Yeah.
So
Is there more input than output?
on back to kind of Elon Musk stuff. SpaceX they don't use nuclear power on theirs. They just
Nope. Hydrogen and oxygen.
hydrogen and oxygen.
Burns
Most
fast
basic.
and
Most
hot.
basic.
Most basic.
Burns fast and hot.
What is it? The most basic
Combustion.
Combustion.
Reaction.
Well, I'm not a chemist. I took general chemistry, so
I took something.
Yeah, that's,
And I
that's
did
as
not
much as
get a
I
very
took
good
in
grade.
chemistry.
I took something.
so on those, you're limited to your how much hydrogen you have and how much oxygen.
Right. Yeah. And that's definitely kind of the drawback of where we're at, or how, that's why we shoot up very big rockets and the very big rockets fall back down the Earth, because we have to have a very big rocket to get the small rocket out of Earth's orbit. Right. And so we have these huge launchers that are launched that hold huge amounts of hydrogen and oxygen to get the shuttle out of the orbit. And once it's out of orbit, it can use very little hydrogen and oxygen to actually move because it doesn't have gravity to deal with. But getting out of that gravitational orbit is pretty rough.
Doesn't have as much gravity. It has other gravities, acting on it, other forces. So what is new with SpaceX? With Elon Musk and
I think they're about to
They launched
launch the Falcon Heavy, or did they already do that?
I don't. I'm
I
pretty sure.
saw
I'm
in
pretty
the
sure the
news.
Falcon Heavy launched.
And I saw in the news recently that they launched a rocket, within the last month.
Well, they're
they're
doing,
always launching.
they're doing a lot of
rockets,
rocket launches, right?
putting satellites in orbit.
Yeah.
This-
Falcon Heavy's definitely launched. I think the next step's BFR. Right now,
BFR yet.
right now they're trying to kind of perfect the reusable rockets, right?
Yeah.
What does
And so
BFR stand for those sitting at home and not me?
a big rocket,
A big rocket. All
Big
right.
friendly giant. Or wait.
BFR.
big freaking rocket,
That's close enough.
big freaking rocket. I'm
And-
sure that's what Musk
And so
said.
it's gonna launch soon. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know how soon it's going to launch. They're trying to get the reusable
As
rockets.
It comes back into.
And so that's really what SpaceX has been pushing towards, is reusing those rockets, because those are super expensive to make, right? And so
NASA knows.
yeah, NASA uses a bunch of them, and they've definitely thrown a bunch of them away, right? But that's been a big thing to reduce the cost to get to space, is being able to reuse those rockets. And so that's kind of what they've been primarily focusing on right now. Well, because they're launching a lot of satellites and things, so they're just doing a bunch of launches to get that worked out. And here, I think 2020, 2021 time frame is when they're hoping to do a BFR launch, and actually be able to be almost to the spot they want to be, to start going out and exploring space.
Do you think the Mars idea is realistic, or just a fad to get
I definitely
somewhere
heard
else?
Musk said he wants.
What's the Mars idea? Fill me in.
The fact that Elon Musk thinks that I believe it's in the next 15, 20 years, he wants to colonize Mars.
Okay.
So they want to take the BFR and get it to Mars and
Right.
back.
I'm guessing not the original BFR, or maybe a
Yeah, probably
BFR
it's very-
2.0.
Yeah.
6.0 at that point, probably.
So colonizing Mars, is that what your question is? Do you think that's practical in the next 15 years?
Not practical, but
Obtainable?
obtainable.
Obtainable.
Yeah, because I don't think it's practical, but is it possible?
Well, I've seen The Martian, or is it called The Martian with what's
Yeah.
his name?
Definitely the Martian.
I don't think
Matt
Chance knows.
Damon.
He got
Matt
stuck on
Damon,
Mars.
yes. Yeah.
He got stuck on Mars.
Yes.
Had to live there for like a year.
I've seen that. So Mars is not a very habitable place. What kind of survival things? So I've seen the movie, so I know exactly what goes into it. But
Right, it's a movie. Definitely true.
well, it's a documentary.
Right,
But-
basically,
What do you think
it didn't happen.
goes into? Are they going to build a space station? Is that what the next?
Right, ultimately, you're gonna have to build something that holds humans on the face of the planet, so you can have oxygen. Right, you're gonna have to build some sort of thing that we can inhabit, and then have the big vehicles and things necessary to move around. And so that's gonna be a big time investment, just building out the infrastructure so we can just physically be there. Right.
So by the time that colonization will happen, we will have practiced multiple times, many times, on how to get there.
I don't know about many times. It'll probably be like the second time.
So you think
I think so. I'm pretty sure recently they said they started the sign up list to go to Mars, and they said you have to be ready to die pretty much. So I don't know how many test runs they're gonna do.
Yeah, I bet we
Right.
send some stuff to Mars and kind of let it float out there, and then once we be sure it's there, we'll send people, right? Because it's like a 6 year journey to Mars. It's not a quick top, it's not like just get in your car and drive 20 minutes near Mars. It's a long way
well,
away,
maybe we'll get there eventually.
right?
A day trip to Mars.
That's
We'll
pretty
build
fast.
a
Light speed.
elevator.
Light speed, yeah, right. And so I think if you did light speed, it would be like
It wouldn't be
maybe
that
like
long.
a 3 or 4 minute.
Yeah.
I think it's like 3 or 4 minutes
We'll
to
get
go on
there.
light speed.
We'll get there.
Plus, yeah, but you gotta get out of Earth's orbit before you can go light speed. So it's probably a couple hours by the time you get out of Earth's orbit and get there. But it's 3 minutes of travel time at light speed.
So on this space station, how many people do you think that they're gonna, initially have a test run on?
I mean, you definitely need enough people to be able to do all the tasks, right? You're gonna have to have a bunch, biologists, right?
Botanist, obviously,
Botanists,
they're gonna send Matt Damon,
Doctors, engineers,
right? Yeah, Matt Damon's gonna go up with them.
and I
But
mean, obviously, these people need to be able to build.
and you need people
You're
that
not
are
gonna
gonna
send,
breed.
yeah.
So,
So on this sign up list is their requirements. I'm sure there's a
I'm
height
sure
and
there's
I'm sure there's a height and weight requirement
and probably an age requirement.
and an
yeah
age.
certain level of physical
So what I'm
fitness.
trying
I
to say
bet.
is, when can I sign up, and how many requirements am I failing so I can get there?
Well, there are
Let's
definitely gonna
find
be
out.
requirements, right? So they're definitely gonna want people that
Or lightweight. Weight is a huge issue.
weight
We'll get there.
is hard, right? So you're trying to pull something out of the Earth's orbit. Anything that weighs anything is hard. You can weigh a pound and it's hard. Um, right. And so I'm sure they're gonna some of that, but yeah, you really gotta look at a big picture here of the complement of people you're gonna need to be able to do all the functions you need to do, right? You're gonna need people to build things, right? You're gonna
Manufacturer.
have to
Yep.
put the stuff together once you get it there and hope nothing's broken. What happens when something's broken, right? You're gonna need something you have to fix the thing, right? You're gonna need just the physical side of putting the stuff together and maintaining the physical infrastructure. And you're gonna need the whole other side of you need food up there, right? You can't just ship 20 years worth of food up there. And so, they're going to ship quite a bit of food, but they're going to start growing food pretty soon. And so, trying to grow the food, trying to get that going, we're definitely going to put some effort towards trying to get an atmosphere built up. And so, there's going to be, a lot of effort towards trying to build up the atmosphere and start that process because that's just going to take time.
So
Well, that's gonna take
when you
millions of years.
when you build an atmosphere,
Mhm.
what goes into that?
Well, you have to, yeah, I don't know.
You don't know? Okay.
I have no idea what it takes to build an atmosphere.
I'm guessing you just plant
We,
some
we,
trees.
Well-
we are currently guessing what it took to build Earth's atmosphere, but we have no idea.
Took
It's-
millions of years, so it's not an easy task.
Okay, so we don't know what goes into that, and we're guessing.
Right.
So
Nobody
there's
knows.
no. So what kind of things would happen if you got up there? And I mean, I guess building an atmosphere isn't your top priority because it's going to take so long.
Right, but if it takes a while, you definitely get started early.
No, I completely agree with that. But if you have an issue, I mean, I guess you got to wait another 6 years
Right, and so
at minimum, a minimum of 6 years.
yeah, the travel times are definitely a rough one, especially because if they have a problem, right? If you find out there's a problem on Mars, you can get something together and ship it, but it takes 6 years to get there, and so it's not like you just immediately get a new part or immediately get a new anything up there.
So
Just wait till Jeff Bezos gets a hold of his one-day shipping to Mars.
yeah.
One day shipping to Mars would be a trick.
Well, if anyone can do it, it can be him.
Yeah, Jeff Bezos.
I'll look him up.
He's-
I'll put
He's
the
got a
word
space
in his
company.
ear.
He might do it.
So okay, so he has a space company. So my understanding was SpaceX was one of the only companies. So there's others.
Yeah. Well, so Bezos is not near as outspoken about all the stuff he does. Musk is pretty outspoken. So we know a lot more about kind of Musk stuff. But Bezos definitely has a space company that he's been playing with. I don't know where exactly they're at, but he's definitely been playing around with space.
So is the space industry privatized?
It's getting there. It is not privatized yet. We still have NASA.
So NASA's
So,
still a
it's not
thing,
privatized.
which is the government.
Right.
Are
But it's
other
getting there.
is the United States still paying other companies or not other companies, other countries to go to the moon or go to
I'm
you
sure
know,
we are,
explore the
right?
space.
So you kind of have to if you're going to space. You kind of have to be all over the globe, just because of launch windows to launch out of the atmosphere. So they're not all the time, and depending on which direction you want to go, you definitely want to be pointed in that direction when you launch. And
Okay.
so,
That makes sense.
it, being all around the globe makes a lot of sense, especially whenever you're. I mean, even just satellite launches, right? So you want to be in a particular orbit when you get up there, and so you want to be kind of in that general area before when you launch, and when you get up there, you kind of want to be in the general right area. And so, being all over the globe is just an important part of going to space in general.
So Space Force.
Oh no,
That's a besides the
who are we
politics version.
fighting?
Besides the politics version,
Who are we fighting?
we obviously need to change the name from Space Force to UNSC, which stands for United Nations Space Command. Then my dreams will come true.
Huh?
But other than that, will the world be putting together a space force?
If we have something to fight, do we have anything to fight?
Well, I'm not saying just as in
Exactly.
Do we need a
fighting,
space force?
but
If
as
we're not
in
fighting.
space, as in space exploration. That should be a global thing, not just a United States thing or a certain company.
Right, but yeah, currently with current economic standings in most of the world, the United States has probably the most money to burn, and so we're kind of just lighting money on fire, literally. To
Just for appearance, pretty much.
yeah,
For
so
So we're
popularity.
space
for-
racing ourselves.
we're,
basically.
we're
cool.
exactly. So it's been kind of Musk's deal to do this, and he's pushing toward it.
So
right?
the government giving him money to do this?
Not that I know of. They're
I
buying.
think they get a
they're
little
buying.
bit of subsidies for
I mean, they're buying room on his rockets to go send their
Satellites.
up to space and do whatever else they want to do. They're paying for services, but he's providing the service. They're not paying him to then spend. They're not giving him money to go
To R&D or to go to
not
Mars.
that I know of. Right? They're just buying his
I mean, there could be some
Space on his
understandable
rocket.
kind of things, but
right.
so that's interesting. That
This is kind of Musk's thing
yeah,
and
I mean,
Bezos' thing.
well, Bezos, not very outspoken as you said about it, but when we get to Mars, we colonize what?
Mars.
We're gonna have to fight the Martians.
Well, I don't know. Maybe are there
That's
Martians?
what Space Force is for.
Are there Martians?
Well, I'm saying
Do we know they're Martians?
those people that have colonized there, what happened when the United States?
Oh, you're saying like
13
they secede?
Yes, from the
They-
globe, I guess.
Well,
From-
they're quite a ways
Their-
away,
Their
so
own nation.
they're quite a ways away, and they're
Do-
kind of up a creek if they secede.
Yeah, they.
what kind of laws are up there? I mean, you're obviously out of the United States, so you don't have United States laws, but
Right. and
Whether-
So I'm assuming it'd fall under like the same type of law that maritime falls
Maritime.
under, right? So no actual country controls it, but it's still a place that humans can be.
that you can't,
Still a place-
murder is still murder. It's not,
Yeah, so there's still a place people can be, and so it would probably fall under like the maritime laws.
you
that
stole
type of
food
law.
from, little Susie. You're
Right,
a bad
but-
person. Were you
but-
gonna send them back to Earth?
The law side of things probably won't be as big of a deal until you get a pretty good sized colony, right? So the first 20 or 30 years, I don't think the law
I'm sure
side
that's
of
one of the
things
requirements.
would be as big of a deal, right? Because you don't have very many people up there, right? You're talking maybe 100, 200 people, and so those people are all working together to do something, right? So I don't think the law side of things would be that big of a deal until you get 1,000 people, 2,000, 5,000 people. I think the first quite a while you wouldn't have to worry about keeping the peace, mostly because everybody's very dependent on everybody else to get the job done. And so it's not like you can just go kill somebody because then you won't have water or something, right? Because they're
Well-
doing something productive.
But would human nature take over? And all of them are going to be. They're not going to be thriving in any way whatsoever. So is
Right.
someone
It'll
going
be
to take?
sustaining.
I think they'll be more cared about surviving than cared about, oh, you upset me, I'm gonna kill you type thing.
Yes, but what if I want
Well, when we get
your
to that point-
resources so I can survive?
So what kind of government would it be? Communist up there? Everybody gets this equal share of food and water and resources.
It has
Or-
to be. There's no other option. You can't.
I mean, you're all
sell
working.
something.
Yeah.
There's no
You can't set up
capitalism,
business, There's no,
right? You have
there's
100
no
people
form
up
of
there,
money.
right?
So-
and you're very reliant on people back at Earth to send you stuff. So the second Earth erupts into a ball of flames, you're
Yeah.
kind of out of luck because unless you built up enough infrastructure at Mars to sustain you indefinitely, you're out of luck, right? So that you have to share resources.
So that could become an issue, not just the issues that you're dealing with on Mars, the issues that are happening on Earth are very much relevant. If say
Oh
somebody
yes, definitely. Like if something
attacks,
happens to the United States of America and you're part of the U.S.
you're part
colony,
of say
right?
SpaceX
If
sends you
SpaceX sends you up there and you're part of the right, and something happens to the United States, like we have a big famine or a big disease breaks out or something, right?
or an EMP or
We're not
whatever it
we're
is.
not going to have near as many resources to just fire off a rocket every 3 years to send a ton of stuff to you.
So water up there. I mean, obviously you can grow food
So,
eventually,
hopefully,
hopefully. Fingers crossed.
right,
Water to water your food to,
right.
do we send every, like you said, 3 years send, a tank of water?
Well, we would definitely be sending a lot of water originally. I've heard rumors that they found some water on Mars, but I don't know.
It's all ice.
I don't. Well, you
So
can
Well, they
turn
could bring it. They
ice
could.
into
yes, no,
water.
no. So
They
there's
could
this
chop
there's
up.
this
Fun
crazy
fact.
there's this crazy
Fun
theory I
fact.
saw one day. Yeah, this
All right,
crazy
here we
theory I
go,
saw one
guys.
day. So
You just
this
put it
guy was
inside
talking
the
about
sun.
how you go and like launch nukes on Mars, just tons of nukes on Mars, heat up the core to where all the ice melts, and you pretty much create a primitive
A primitive
planet.
electromagnetic
Yeah,
field.
yeah, and that's how an atmosphere begins to form. You get water, and you have your primitive Earth. In
I'm sure
essence,
Musk's open ideas. You should send him an email.
I'll tell him.
This isn't
He'll
Keaton's
hire
idea,
me.
so he can't steal it.
You're right. You're right. I saw it on YouTube.
Oh, good.
Uh,
So very
Send
realistic.
Musk
Very
internet.
realistic.
Link to the
deep
video.
internet. So that's interesting. I mean,
Yeah, the human side of things. If somebody's sent up there, it's definitely going to be. I don't know. We're definitely going to have a pretty stable life on planet Earth before we go up there, because yes, you're very. I mean, you're up there very vulnerable to what happens on Earth, right? Because you need supplies for the first handful of years before you can sustain yourself.
I guess you could send. I mean, you have hydrogen and oxygen, so you could, fuse those.
Right.
Have very much oxygen up down there.
Yeah.
Right. You're definitely in the vacuum of space. You don't
Yeah.
have very much of anything to work with other than what's on the planet. What's stuck to the planet.
So you chop off some ice and you bring it inside and put it in your Brita filter.
You put it in front of the sun for 2 seconds.
You put it in your Brita filter.
Right.
And then it melts, and then you just pour it out, and you got water. That's how I understand it.
Yeah, unless there's something in the water like mercury or lead or some
Well,
heavy
that's
metal,
why-
right? So
That's why Brita.
there may be a lot more work to do than just thawing the water, because there's all sorts of nasty stuff in the water. There's probably plenty of other stuff that you don't want to drink in the water.
You put some water softener.
Yeah,
'Cause your water's
softeners are
hard,
important.
and the sun will soften the ice, which will make it water. Then your water's hard.
Right.
Then you put in your
'Cause it's
Brita
got
filter.
mercury in it or something.
Let's be honest. We're like 200 years away from making life sustainable on Mars. Probably longer.
I don't know.
You don't think so?
I think we could do it in 50.
50? I don't know. I
I'm
don't.
gonna double that and say 100, and I have no reasonable idea
I think it depends on what happens on Earth, right?
how
And
many wars happen. And
we're definitely right. We've definitely been a little while without a major war, right? We've been World War II is the last major war. I mean, we had some other minor wars, but we've definitely been quite a while without a major war. If we can continue down that path and continue having a pretty stable life on Earth, I think we can do it in 50. But if something breaks out, we have a big plague that breaks out, or something unforeseeable happens. Climate change actually kicks us in the teeth and causes some real issues. Uh, I think that type of stuff will make it will take it a lot longer. If we had a pretty in good conditions, I think we'd do it in 50.
so, an economic crash that would probably
Because-
affect that,
right.
Because SpaceX would not have as much money to send rockets.
Exactly. So any of that will affect anything on Earth will have a huge impact on Mars, right? It's just a big
Anything will affect that, whether it's economic.
economic.
To me, it's more
social,
will the
anything, right?
that you think the technology will be there in 50 years.
I think
to
we have the
be
technology almost right now. I think Musk is going to have the technology in 10 years,
really.
So,
but it's just going to take time to do it.
Yeah. Do you think we can ever get there faster?
I mean, we'll get there faster incrementally,
Realistically.
but I don't think we're ever going to be up to light speed.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
so you think
fast.
the people that are signing up now?
So
to go
I
to
think we may
Mars-
be able to get down to 3 years maybe, but I think 3 years is probably going to be the lowest we get to, right?
Yeah.
For the travel, because it's definitely a long way away. So, but in 50 years, if you're firing rockets for 40 of those, right? You firing a rocket every year or two, right? That's quite a few rockets. I mean,
Yeah.
every year you're sending 40 rockets up there, and 40 rockets carry quite a bit of supplies, right? And that's quite a bit of time to be up there and to find problems and to fix problems. I think 40 years of firing rockets continuously would definitely we would definitely be well on our way, if not self-sustaining.
But
By that time, you
how
have
does
kids.
SpaceX profit off of this?
They don't.
So it's just the money. It's a
Right.
oh,
It's a thing that a lot of
Needs to
people
be
are going to
done,
be,
but
a lot of people that are going to have to be behind it, right? I don't. The government will eventually have to pay for it if it's going to be a sustainable thing, right? Because SpaceX definitely can't keep paying for it eventually. They're going to have the ability to do it, but they're not going to be able to pay for it.
yeah. They just need to make a
Right. Make a Patreon for multiple trillions of dollars.
Yeah.
I think we can start a GoFundMe, and I think we can accomplish that.
Maybe.
But in 50 years, that's people are gonna have
Right.
kids by then.
And I think a lot of it depends on where the economy is going in the near term, on what that looks like, right? Because we may have a lot of excess time on our hands with how far we're coming technologically, and so we may have a lot of extra time on our hands to do things like that. There was a movie about it. The guy
Interstellar.
Interstellar,
Uh,
right? So they had all these people working on this stuff that they were building, right? So they were building a thing to escape the planet, but they were kind of just having people do something, right? Because they were kind of out of things to do, and so they had a lot of people working on something to just do something. So I think that may play a part in it if we get to a point in our economy where we don't have to work near as hard as we work right now, and we have a lot more free time and a lot more free resources that we could put a lot more resources towards things like that, right?
Yeah.
And especially if we get more renewable energies, more energies that will take a lot of effort right now, but once we get down the road in 20 years, they'll take a lot more effort. I think once we get down that path of that, plus robotics doing a lot of our stuff, self-driving cars, there's a lot of these things that, if as a human race, if we go down that path and implement it successfully, I think we're going to have a lot more time and resources on our hands to do things like this.
Any closing thoughts about anything? Whether it's Elon Musk.
I don't do
Tesla.
well with super.
Are the
super
are the
over-
robots
open-ended
gonna kill
questions.
us? Are the robots gonna kill us one day?
Is
Probably.
iRobot a real threat?
Yes,
Yes.
Why?
because you can make a computer do anything. We can program a computer to murder people, right? Like you can make a computer do anything.
But will they
Well, they figured it out
figure it out
themselves.
do it themselves?
Will
Completely
they
independent,
secede and annihilate
a,
everyone?
a separate race.
I don't think so.
So it'd be more of a human interaction thing.
It would be more of a human cause to do that.
Yeah.
More so than the computer figured it out.
How long do you think until we have
And
soldiers that are robots? Like you've seen the Boston Dynamics.
we already
5
have,
years.
I mean, we already have soldiers and robots called drones.
Yeah, but boots on the ground. So
I'd say 5 years.
Humanoid robots don't make sense
why not?
because the human movement is very inefficient. It's it's a lot more efficient to have wheels.
Okay.
So it's very
Sure.
hard to make human
So
movement.
wheels on the ground.
Right.
Wheels on the ground.
Like
No
wheels,
boots, just wheels.
wheels,
I'm-
and even tracks are much more efficient
Yeah.
than human.
Well, I'm pretty sure
walking.
Boston Dynamics has one of their
I've seen
robots.
several
It's got
videos.
tracks.
Right, and so tracks and
The
wheels
pack
are much more
mules
efficient.
and-
So humanoid robots, no need because
Yeah.
you can just make a thing that has tracks and
Yeah.
a gun on it.
Yeah.
But then you're just shooting other things that have tracks and guns on them, and we're just playing a big video game.
Yeah.
We should just do it all in VR.
The dream.
It's the same thing,
Esports right there.
Es-
That's real. That's real.
Esports will turn into military technology.
right? And so, I mean, what's the difference if you're shooting something physical that's a robot that moves and shooting another robot that's physical, or if you're doing it in VR, shooting robots that are, like
Yeah.
we could fight in VR and it would be way more efficient.
That gets into Ender's
Hey,
Game.
makes sense.
That movie Ender's Game, you guys probably never seen that. It's a weird movie. But all right, so like any closing thoughts? That's it.
I don't do well with super
Okay.
open-ended questions.
Well, I guess we'll end it here then.
All right.
All right, thank you, Chance, for joining us. This is Simply Technical,
Episode 1.
episode 1. Yeah.